I have a crush on my childhood friend. Depressed and self-loathing, or sweaty and regretful. Those were the two choices that presented itself that Friday night. I had nothing but a pile of homework and papers due, and it was college. Why would I be stuck indoors alone on a Friday night? My entire building was empty, and my roommate always disappeared on the weekends. So, staying in all night would have been really depressing. So yes, I accepted the invitation, but no sooner had I gotten there than I wanted to get out, but it was too late. It had been a sane couple of weeks. Freshman year of college, new classes, living alone, with a roommate, meeting new people, hating myself for the insane workload I piled on myself. For a first-timer, nothing out of the ordinary, really. Then I got an invitation to a frat party. The person's name was Chuck, and we sat next to each other in American history class. He seemed really level-headed and chill when I first met him. But you know what they say about people and their personalities when the sun goes down. I don't care for fraternizing much, and I think their existence in this day and age is corny. But again, hey, who am I to turn down an invitation? I didn't expect that invitation to be the thing that could very well turn my college experience upside down. I know, it seems like I'm exaggerating, and maybe I am a bit. But truly, I hadn't been in that much deep shit in years, and coincidentally, it's the same thing that put me in such deep shit all those years ago. A pair of warm brown eyes caught my blue ones, and I instantly became literally and figuratively. But more on that later. A messy-haired blonde boy, Nathan, or better refrained as Nate. He was seen across the room from me, in the middle of a group of guys laughing. We locked eyes for a few seconds, before I pulled my gaze away and looked for anywhere else to be. Why was I fucked? Because I knew Nate, and I used to be in love with him. But more importantly, he used to be my closest friend. Until he moved away and we lost touch. I thought it was for the best, because it helped me get over him and refocus myself. But fate always seems to be turning things on its head. But why of all colleges to get into, did I have to be in the one that Nate went to as well? I pried my eyes away from his inviting ones, and went around the room to literally anything else. Met some classmates, which led to meeting new people. Had a couple of drinks, then found Chuck, but to my surprise, I had walked myself into Chuck's chummy group of friends, which just happens to consist of dear, sweet Nate. Chuck smiled and slung his arm around my neck when he saw me. "Hey, Mark, glad you could make it. I want you to meet some friends." The introductions went around in a circle, while Nate turned a hole in my side, staring at me. When it landed on Nate, he stopped. Chuck, his eyes never once leaving mine. "Yeah, I know Mark," he said, with a hint of a smirk. He's one of my oldest friends." Chuck's eyebrows shot up. "No shit! How come you've never mentioned him? You've been at his school a year, you know." Nate chuckled. "Because I hadn't spoken to him in 3 years. I moved away in my junior year of high school, and we sort of lost touch. It's just a nice surprise." Chuck beamed. "Awesome! We're all gonna have a great time. I think we all need new drinks." The group moved ahead with Chuck, but Nate stayed back and stared at me. The music was too loud and led me out of the room and onto a balcony. "This is a surprise. Ditto to that, Nate. Who would have thought?" He chuckled. "I saw when you saw me earlier, though. You were avoiding me or something," he joked. "What? No way. I just wanted to work the room a little. First college party and all that." He nodded in amusement, but didn't push any further. "So, how are you liking the place so far? And how have you been? I know we didn't keep in touch after. I left even though I wish I did. It just felt like you got so busy." I put my hands in my pockets and shrugged. So far, so great in regards to college. And yeah, I've been really good. Good, actually. I'm sorry I went AWOL on you. I wish I could explain, but I can't seem to find a reason. Lie. He nodded. "Yeah, it's cool. You're here now, and we can make up for lost time. Starting with this party. Wanna go back in?" "Yeah, lead the way." Nate and I walked back into the party, while I was a sweaty mess and couldn't understand. I was over him, right? I decided to not pay any attention to it and just focus on having fun. Feelings or not, I did enjoy hanging out with Nate, and it was good to see him again. I'd sort out my shit another day. when I went back into the party and I threw myself into it. I had a lot of fun, had way too many drinks, played too many party games, spin the bottle, darts, drunk Uno, Monopoly drinking game, truth or dare, strip poker, drunk foosball, etc. As long as it had drunk in front of it, I made sure to play it. A group stationed next to the beer pong table, and everyone had been taking turns to play against each other. It was singles beer pong, one-on-one matches, which meant people got a lot drunker than regular beer pong. The frat boys seemed to not spare any expense on the booze, because there seems to be an endless supply of alcohol. Not that I was complaining or anything. Then it got to my turn. The liquid courage in me had started to kick in, so I was a lot looser than I was at the start of the night. I looked up at my opponent. It was Nate. We stared back at each other, trash talking the best we could, since we're both drunk. He winked at me, and my heart skipped a beat. At first, I didn't want to trust my luck and playing against him because I had never been successful beating him before. But eventually, liquid courage did its job and pushed ahead. Before you knew it, we both tied. We each had one cup left on our side of the table, and we were very drunk. Somewhere along the lines, I locked in and decided that Nate didn't get to win everything. Liquid courage is a real thing. Nate went first and bounced the ball right off the edge of the table, but he missed his shot. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath and bounced the ball off the ridge, and it landed straight into my cup, which meant I won. Everyone watching the game cheered, and I saw Nate roll his eyes ever so lightly. A smile on his face and downed the contents of the cup swiftly. I had begun to stagger, so he led me away from the table. As the next set took over the game, we went out to get some fresh air, and he gave me a bottle of water to keep my head clear. The cool air hit my face and I smiled, only just realizing how cramped the room was. I took a swig of the bottle and noticed Nate looking at me. "How come you're not so drunk?" I asked him. "I am. I'm just not an obvious drunk. Unlike some people," he hinted. "Hey, I'm not drunk. I'm pretty clear-headed." "Yeah, sure. You tell yourself that, okay?" He laughed. "You know, I really did miss you after you left. I just didn't know how to tell you. You were living your best life over there, and I was happy you were. People weren't so nice to you when you came out, so I was glad you found somewhere better. I just didn't want to be left alone in that place. It's a really toxic community." He was silent for a while. Then he moved. "Let's go back to your room now." We walked to my building, talking and catching up. He was a computer science major, and he had been working to get a scholarship to this school for quite a while. Even though things were better after he moved away, there were still some restrictions to his kind of person, and he couldn't wait till he got out to be his own person, which he had been happy doing ever since he got to college. He walked me all the way to my room. When I unlocked the door, the room was empty, signaling the fact that my roommate wouldn't be back all night. I went to change my clothes and come back out without a shirt on. When he saw me, his eyes lingered on my torso for a second before pulling away. We sat together and talked for a while. The tension in the air was of a sexual kind, but I didn't want to be the one to assume and then be wrong about anything, so I avoided the big elephant in the room. That is, until Nate turned to me. "Hey, you know when I said I was drunk?" I nodded. "Good, because drunk people say crazy stuff all the time, like, I'm going to say something, and I hope you don't freak out." I waited, and he continued. "I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you ever since we got here. I don't know if that's something you'd be willing to—" I cut him off, crashing my lips into his. His response immediately, his hands curving down my back and around my waist. In an instant, he pulled me up and started straddling me, lust of urgency kicking in. I pulled his shirt over his head, which broke the kiss long enough for him to ask, "Are you sure about this?" I answered with a smirk, "I'm drunk too." "Aren't you?" He smiled back and reconnected our lips. He moved south and kissed my neck, leaving love marks evident in his trail. I got up and pulled him all the way into my room for more guaranteed privacy, and shut the door behind me. There seems to be something heavy on top of me. I tried to move, and it proved to be difficult. I opened my eyes and saw Nate snoring lightly on my chest, and everything from the night before came back to me. I just hooked up with Nate. Now, 15-year-old me would have been thrilled about the news, and maybe I also sort of am. because the feelings I once had for Nate had finally come full circle, albeit without him ever knowing about them in the first place. He stirred and I noticed a small smile on his face. "Good morning, Mark." His eyes flew open and looked at me. His cheeks reddened. He finally got off my chest, and I was surprised he couldn't hear my heart beating so fast. I got off the bed immediately and threw a shirt on, which earned a chuckle from him. "Oh, come on, Mark. So what, we hooked up? It's not a big deal. There was alcohol involved. We'd been talking. It's a normal situation, really." I crossed my arms. "Yeah, totally. It's just, I don't do casual sex very often, so I don't really know how to react. I don't even know how last night happened." He stretched, his muscles contracting, and my eyes lingering. "Yeah, me neither. I hope you don't regret it, though." I shook my head. "Of course not. I had a great time. It's not gonna happen again, is it?" "Not unless you wanted to, Mark. As long as we can still be friends." I smiled. "Yeah, I'd like that very much." He finally got off the bed and gathered his clothes. He got dressed, picked up his phone, and asked me for my number. I gave it to him, and he walked towards me. "I'll see you around, Sterling," and walked out of the room. 5 weeks later, true to his word, Nate made sure we hung out more often. It was great company, and it gave me an actual social life. I was introduced to some really good people, but I hadn't been able to get the night out of my head. I thought about it every day. When I woke up, I'd remember that we'd been together on my bed. When I saw him, I'd become a sucker for anything he wanted. I was falling in love with him again, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Spending time with him made me remember why I fell for him in the first place. He was kind, sweet, funny, and really a good friend. He'd showed up for me whenever I needed it. He'd be so willing to help make my college life a seamless experience. He helped me balance my life pretty well. He listened so well and always knew the right thing to say. He'd even shown up at my dorm, and we'd get coffee each morning before class, which only made me even more fucked. Keeping my feelings under wraps was a challenge enough, but when you added how often I've seen him making out with different guys or hanging out with new people, I couldn't be blamed for starting to go stir-crazy. Lucky me, I never went stir-crazy in front of anyone. I just got to my room and screamed into my pillow. Enough time until I was calm enough. And thanks to my vocal insistence that we didn't hook up again, he only saw me as his best friend. And he was very generous in telling me all about his escapades. Listening to him give the details of his wild nights as we went on those walks, or him sending texts that he'd have to leave me at the party because he was going home with someone else, stung a whole lot more, and most days were even enough to ruin my morning or nights, depending on when it happened. Yes, I admitted. Jealousy ran through my veins. Why didn't I just hook up with him or something? Well, I'm glad you asked. I wasn't in the business of casual sex very often, and I wasn't going to insert myself into a situationship knowing that I was already in love with said person. It was a very weak-minded thing to do, and I believed I had more self-respect than to go that route. So yes, I listened to him talk. Yes, it drove me crazy. No, I didn't tell him to shut up. Why? Because I was trying to be a good friend, and I was determined to stay that way. 2 months later, screw this determination. I hated how I felt hiding my feelings. I was a grown man. This whole pining after someone unobtainable was not a good look at all, and was just so high school. So I thought I would have to either get over him or say something and wake up. But I wasn't going to make either of those choices, so I chose the coward's route. I ignored my feelings as much as I could and tried to suck it all down. But there really is no getting over Nathan Ford. When you fall in, there is only heartbreak and heartache. Did I cook up scenarios in my head that made it seem like he could actually be interested in me? Yes, I did, but it's just copium, and it didn't last long. Did I consider wanting to hook up with him again? Yes, I did, but it would also only be copium, and I'd be back pining and hating myself. So I did the next best thing. I stayed away from him. It wasn't easy. He was a really good friend, and losing that kind of person twice was unheard of, but I tried to. I got up early, left the door much early, stayed away from our mutual friends, avoided his calls and texts, literally blocking him and cutting him out of my life. Did I feel awful doing so? Yes, it haunted me so much I hated myself for doing it. But it also became much easier to breathe and cope, so I hope the ends justified the means. I hated myself still, but at least I was near the end of my pining. Thank God I didn't have any classes with him. It would have been easier if I could have just left and not knowing that he was 2 buildings away from me. I cursed the day I went to that party. One night of depression would have haunted me as much as this decision was hurting me. And the worst part, no one on earth knew I had a huge crush on Nate, so I couldn't really confide in anyone. Not if I did, it would change anything, really. I knew what I was doing made no sense and was the equivalent of betrayal, but I really didn't know what else to do. At least I could screw this up without some good conscience hounding in my ear about it. So, I really went through with it, stayed away from him for 2 months. Winter break in the next semester, no words exchanged from me to Nate, or vice versa. I also made sure I stayed away from the mutual hangout spots, or took the long way around to avoid the dorm house altogether. Was it silly? Yes, very much so. 1 month later, the snow had begun to melt. We've been having warmer days, so I decided to go out for a walk on campus. My life now consisted of classes, studying in the library, studying in my room, and going out to eat. So I felt like I deserved some airtime after everything I sacrificed. I kept walking for some time, until I got to a familiar building. I stopped and looked at it, wondering if Nate was there with any of his other partners, or if he was with them in their room. I chuckled, and turned my eyes back to the road, but then I saw him, books in hand, staring at me. I turned around to walk the other way, but he ran after me. He caught up to me and held my wrist. I turned to him, and was met with a pleading look in his eye. "I just want to talk." I nodded and we took a walk. It reminded me of the night we hooked up, when he walked me back to my room. Except this time, we were in complete silence. We eventually took a seat on a bench on the campus lawn. He let out a breath. "So you're avoiding me?" I nodded. "Am I wrong in believing that you were avoiding me when I left as well?" I shook my head. He scoffed. "Say something, damn it!" "I don't know what to say to you, Nate," I said, my voice low. "How about you tell me why you completely shut me off?" "Huh? You're my best friend, Mark. I thought if anyone would understand me, it would be you. But for me to get this treatment from you twice in one lifetime? I think I'm owed an explanation." The hurt in his voice broke me. "Tell me why." I thought. Avoiding him was a good idea again. "Nate, I wish I could tell you, but I don't think it's a good idea." He narrowed his eyes. "So I'm just supposed to go on with my life, believing the worst, and just never talk to you again? What the fuck?" "I think it's just best if there's space between us." "For what reason, Mark?" "I'm sorry." "You're not sorry. No, a sorry person wouldn't do this to someone they called their friend. After everything we've been through, you don't even respect me enough to tell me the truth, Mark? Are you kidding me?" He started to get angry. "I respect you so much. That's why I'm not telling you the truth." I raised my voice to match his. "What the hell kind of logic is that?" I took a deep breath. "You wouldn't get it, Nate. It's fine. Just let it go." "I don't want to let it go, Mark. Tell me what it is. I'm sure we can figure it out." I shook my head. He tried holding my gaze, but I couldn't look him in the eye. Yet he kept pleading and pleading, saying it was probably not as deep as I thought it was. Or maybe it was something he could fix. Then I just snapped. "It's because I like you, damn it. Okay? There, I said it. I like you, Nate. I liked you back then, and you moved, so I got cut off to get over you. And then we hooked up, and then you made me like you again. And I just didn't want to put that burden on you, so I avoided you, which is what I'm going to do now." And I got up and walked away, leaving him on the bench, contemplating what I just threw at him. Later that night, I don't know what I expected after blurting out my feelings, but I kept hammering down on myself, fully convinced that Nate hated me now. I was doom scrolling in my pajamas in my room. My roommate came in and told me that he was leaving, and he'd be gone for the weekend. So not only I was depressed, but alone in misery. For a few minutes I heard the door close. There was a soft knock on my room door. I looked up, expecting him to have returned to ask me for something, but instead, Nate was looking at me. I scurried off the bed, and we stood, staring at each other. Then I walked towards him. I really don't have anything to say anymore. Goodbye. The next thing I knew, I was backed up against the wall, Nate's hands all over me. Our hands were everywhere, all over each other's bodies, and his lips made contact with every place my skin was visible. He kissed me with so much urgency that he nearly violently ripped off his coat, and we moved from place to place, a total lack of discretion for caution. Eventually, we made it to the bed. However, he hovered over me, kissing me while unbuttoning his shirt. He tossed it aside and did the same with my pajama top. Then he tugged at my pants, pulling them down to my ankles. He placed a single kiss on my lips and then crawled off me. Then he tugged me over to the edge of the bed. Without giving too much away, it's safe to say that the event that followed was fulfilling. Finally, after months of pining and daydreaming, I was finally back at that place, 100% sober and alert throughout every part of the act. And the same could be said for Nate as well. He wasn't drunk, and there was a certain feel this time. It wasn't just a casual hookup, call me corny or whatever, but it was on a deeper level, like we were communicating things we didn't know how to say with words. The words unspoken and left hanging in the air were hanging no more. It went on for quite some time, and we made sure to keep eye contact the entire time. Thank goodness for my roommate's exit, or else he'd hate me for life. 90 minutes later, I was snuggled to Nate's side, unable to hide the smile on my face. Our breathing was synced together, our legs tangled together under the sheets, and he was drawing circles on my palm. I'd never felt happier than I was at that moment. As he played with my hand, I asked, "So why did you come back?" He laughed. "You waited almost 2 hours to ask me that, Mark, and yet I'm the whore?" I shrugged. You seemed rather occupied, and I didn't want to interrupt you. Never interrupt a focused person. Haven't you heard that? Oh really, mister? I have nothing more to say. You had many chances to ask before now. I think you were the very occupied one. We both laughed, and he continued. Did you know I hadn't hooked up with anyone since you started avoiding me? I looked up at him. Are you serious? He nodded. I thought maybe it would have been the reason you kept your distance. But then I couldn't even tell you because you had me blocked everywhere. I couldn't believe it. You hadn't been with anyone for over a month? He scoffed. Hey, I'm not a complete horn dog, you know. I just do it because I can. And it's not my fault a lot of guys find me attractive. I laughed. Wow, we completely lost sight of the topic thanks to your ego. He relented. Okay. You remember just before I walked you back to your room last year? You told me you missed me, but were happy for me. I nodded. Well, I missed you too, and I want you to know this now. You were my first crush, Mark. I liked you back then too. When I left, I felt guilty for leaving you there, because everything I faced, you did too. But I was the lucky one, enough to escape, and you had to conform there and handle their shit. It wasn't fair, but I thought I could at least be there for you by keeping in touch, but you shut me out. So hearing you say it earlier, I kinda hated myself for not saying anything. And then, I beat myself up for it, and I came to the realization that I had no reason to beat myself up. This was our second chance, so I came straight here, having no clue what to say to you, but determined to not leave until you know how I felt. I urged on, and that is, he rolled his eyes, that I like you too, Mark Sterling. I mean, come on. After we hooked up, I thought about it for days, and it kinda made me sad when you said it wasn't going to happen again. So I left it up to you, and since you never took me up on that offer, I thought maybe it was just one-sided. I started to laugh. You know what's funny? I thought about that night for so long, and for reference, up until last night as well. But I was just so scared that it would seem weird to you. I'm not very comfortable with that casual stuff. And you were the first time I had casual sex with anyone. But it was the most special time I had ever because it was you. Sentiment is everything to me. That's the only reason why I was skeptical. He grinned and placed a kiss on my lips. And if it wasn't clear before, I like you too, Nathan Ford. Always have, always will. I blew a raspberry. Phew. So I guess shutting people out isn't the answer, huh? He burst out laughing. You think? We laughed together, just holding each other, feeling sanity in our own little bubble. So, what are you doing this weekend? He asked suddenly. Nothing. My roommate's away all weekend. There was a glint in his eye. Oh, really? So, you have this place all to yourself for 2 days? That's what I said. Why? Do you have something in mind? Nothing specific. I was just wondering if I could hang here with my boyfriend this weekend. He wiggled his eyebrows. I beamed. I think that could be arranged. We spent the rest of the night together, and the entire weekend. Conclusion. It was the first of many weekends we could share together. Eventually, upgrading to take trips away together. When Nate graduated and moved away for work, we made sure this time we kept the communication going and didn't miss a single day of talking to each other. Then, I surprised him when I graduated with a job in the same city as he worked. We got an apartment together and we kept on growing together. One thing that remained the same was Nate damaging his hair by dyeing it blonde every 3 months. He was happy with his fried, damaged hair follicles. And I was happy as well, because even though it took us a while, we took hold of that second chance we were given and made the most of it. The end. Have you ever acted on a crush on a childhood friend before? Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of the Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.